researchers in Turkey now claim they found indisputable evidence that the story of Noah's Ark was not a cautionary tale.
The Ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat.
Because it's in the mountains of Ararat, just like Genesis 8:4 says in the Bible, where Noah's Ark landed. So we're in the right area. We have a shape of a ship.
And just as he has said, what you're about to see will completely change everything you thought you knew about Noah's Ark. After decades of searching, researchers have finally uncovered what they believe to be the actual remains of Noah's Ark, and what they found buried beneath the surface just validated every biblical claim. I'm talking about legitimate scientific investigations conducted by multiple universities involving ground-penetrating radar, soil analysis, and cutting-edge technology that have revealed something absolutely mind-blowing beneath the surface of a mysterious boat-shaped formation in Turkey.
Yeah, so this is really cool. So Ron Wyatt did a radar scan here back in the 80s, and he saw that there was a cavity about 10 feet in to the side of the boat.
A real cavity.
A cavity. And so he said, let's core drill. He got permission to core drill in, this like 3 meters in.
So you're talking about that hole right there.
That's the hole, yep.
That's
so
all that's left of that.
Yeah, it used to be
core drilling.
For those who take the biblical account literally, this discovery represents nothing less than vindication of their faith. Genesis chapter 8, verse 4 states, "Then in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat." And remarkably, the Dupanar Formation sits exactly where Scripture says it should, in the mountain range of ancient Urartu, the region the Bible calls the mountains of Ararat. But before we dive into how every piece of evidence seems to align with biblical prophecy, let me tell you how this all started with a simple aerial photograph that would change everything.
Uzungili, Turkey, 1959. Army Captain İlhan Durupanar flies an aerial reconnaissance mission for NATO.
Captain Durupanar is there to take photographs from his plane in order to map a remote area in the Turkish highlands.
It was September 11, 1959, when Turkish Army Captain İlhan Durupanar made a discovery that would spark decades of controversy. Flying at high altitude for NATO mapping operations, Durupanar spotted something that made him do a double take through his camera lens. The photographs revealed something that seemed to fulfill biblical prophecy with stunning precision. The formation measured approximately 164 meters, which translates to 538 feet in length, dimensions that aligned almost perfectly with Genesis 6:15, where God gives Noah exact specifications. "This is how you shall make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits.
God gives Noah extremely detailed instructions on how to build this ark, how many floors it should have, how many rooms, what type of wood to use, and even its exact dimensions: 515 feet long, 86 feet wide, and 51 feet tall.
This wasn't a coincidence, it was divine revelation. Using the Royal Egyptian cubit of approximately 20.6 inches, 300 cubits translates to exactly 515 feet, matching the Durupanar Formation's length with mathematical precision. The Hebrew word Ararat refers to the ancient kingdom of Urartu, a mountainous region rather than a single peak. This interpretation allows for the ark to have landed anywhere within the broader Ararat mountain range, exactly where the Dupanar site is located.
But in 1961, the Turkish military hired Ara Güler, who was a famous photographer in Turkey, and he went, they put him on a small plane, and he flew at a low altitude over the site and took a lot of photographs from different angles. And in those, you can clearly see this perfectly preserved boat shape.
Within weeks, the discovery hit international headlines, with newspapers around the world publishing the mysterious aerial photographs. This definitely represented the first tangible evidence that the Genesis account wasn't mythology, but historical fact. Early expeditions in the 1960s arrived with high hopes, but left disappointed. Teams found only soil and rocks after preliminary digging, leading many to dismiss the site as a natural geological formation. The story seemed to end there. Just another case of wishful thinking and religious enthusiasm. But one man refused to let it die. and his interpretation of the evidence would spark a revolution in biblical archaeology.
In the late 1970s and throughout the 80s and into the 90s, an American explorer, Ron Wyatt, went out there and was doing work, and he basically got the site back in the news, and it got everyone excited about it.
Ron Wyatt, an amateur archaeologist from Tennessee, became obsessed with the Dupinar site. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Wyatt conducted numerous expeditions, claiming to find evidence that directly correlated with specific biblical descriptions. Wyatt's interpretation was revolutionary because he connected every piece of evidence to explicit biblical passages. When he found what appeared to be petrified wood, he pointed to Genesis chapter 6, verse 14, "Make yourself an ark of gopher wood." When he discovered metal bracket-like formations, he referenced Genesis 4:22, which describes Tubal-Cain as the forger of all implements of bronze and iron, suggesting pre-flood humans had advanced metallurgy. Most dramatically, Wyatt claimed to have found massive anchor stones scattered around the formation. He interpreted these as fulfillment of the biblical narrative's practical requirements, because how else could a vessel the size described in Genesis have remained stable during the catastrophic flood? Wyatt's biblical framework provided a lens through which every piece of evidence gained significance. Local place names seemed to preserve ancient memories. Cargo Konmaz, meaning the raven won't land, potentially referencing Genesis chapter 8, verse 7, where Noah sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. Then came the bombshell that changed everything and provided what proponents claim is irrefutable scientific validation of the biblical account. In 2019, everything shifted when advanced technology finally provided the tools needed to peer beneath the surface without destroying the formation. A team led by researcher Andrew Jones obtained permission to conduct the most comprehensive geophysical survey ever attempted at the site, using ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography. What they found was absolutely stunning and seemed to validate specific biblical descriptions with uncanny accuracy.
Even if you don't have an engine or a sailboat, if you're just floating on the water, when oncoming waves would hit a ship, you need to be pointed. We interviewed him at one of those drogue, weight stones. We'll talk about it in a bit.
Yeah. The radar scans revealed a complex internal structure that appeared to match Genesis's description of the ark's construction. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood, make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and outside with pitch. Deep beneath the muddy surface, the technology detected what appeared to be rooms, corridors, and geometric patterns, exactly what the Bible said Noah was instructed to build. But the most shocking discovery is yet to come. In 2023, a reanalysis of the 2019 data by advanced computer software revealed something that left researchers speechless. A massive central corridor running through the entire length of the formation, connecting to what appeared to be a multi-level internal structure.
Well, I think the ship shape is very strong, but it is sitting on sedimentary rock and dirt. This area that was laid down by water, which to me is a strong point against some people who say it was up on Ararat, which is a volcano.
The big break came when researchers expanded their investigation beyond the boat-shaped formation itself. Ron Wyatt's expeditions in the 1970s had identified at least 13 massive stones scattered within a few kilometers of the main site, some reaching heights of 56 meters and weighing several tons. These weren't ordinary rocks. They were precisely drilled with holes near the top.
He said, well, my friend works for a company, he's VP of this company, and they do that. And so I wasn't putting me on the phone with that guy. This is a weekend. I remember by Monday or Tuesday, we had agreed upon the terms of my contract. They reduced their price. They had their crew ready to go, and everything was set up. And then we were able to sign contract.
Wyatt's interpretation was grounded in naval engineering and biblical narrative. According to Genesis, the flood continued 40 days on the earth, and the waters increased and bore up the ark, and it was lifted above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly upon the world, and the ark went upon the face of the waters. For a vessel carrying every living thing of all flesh, two of every sort, as described, Stability would have been absolutely critical during the world-ending catastrophe described in Scripture.
So this was about 7 meters down, or 21 feet. This was on one area of the boat. And so this was the spot that he highlighted in his analysis. And then we kind of, that was it. He didn't get involved with our project. So fast forward, to 2023, and we get in contact with this other lady, and she does a more thorough analysis of the data.
Wyatt claimed these were drogue stones, massive weights that would have been used to stabilize Noah's Ark during the turbulent floodwaters. The theory suggested that as the flood receded and Noah approached the landing site, these stones were cut loose and dropped sequentially, creating a trail leading directly to where the Ark finally came to rest. Some of the stones bore carved crosses and symbols. These were later memorial markers created by Noah's descendants to commemorate the salvation site. But skeptics immediately pounced on the claims. Armenian archaeologist Dr. Artak Tarian pointed out that similar hold stones are found throughout Armenia and Turkey, often serving as Byzantine grave markers, boundary stones, or pre-Christian cult objects. Even more damaging to Wyatt's credibility were accusations that emerged years later. Archaeologist Randall Price, who had initially worked with the team, later alleged that the entire discovery was an elaborate hoax. But just when it seemed the Durapanar site might be relegated to the dustbin of archaeological hoaxes, new technology provided fresh evidence that even the harshest critics couldn't easily dismiss, and that seemed to fulfill biblical prophecies about the preservation of divine testimony. The 2024 soil analysis conducted by Dr. Saleh Bayraktutan and soil scientist William Crabtree revealed something that natural geological processes couldn't explain. The organic content inside the formation wasn't just higher than the surrounding area, it was distributed in patterns that suggested the decay of organized wooden structures, precisely as described in Genesis' instruction to make yourself an ark of gopher wood.
Than outside. But it was only done, you only had one sample from inside and one sample from outside, so you can't really do statistical analysis of that, because you only have 2. What if that one spot just happened to have higher carbon because a lot of minerals are right there or something, or a decayed tree happened to be right there. So, but that was
even more compelling was the discovery of marine deposits and seafood remnants in the soil samples, suggesting the site had once been submerged underwater, which is exactly what you'd expect from a vessel that had survived the global deluge. Radiocarbon analysis of organic materials found at the site dated human activity between 5500 and 3000 BC, a timeframe that aligned with various flood chronologies from different biblical traditions. However, perhaps the most shocking discovery came from the ground-penetrating radar data, which revealed something no one had expected to find. The 2023 analysis revealed that portions of the internal structure were still hollow, preserved cavities that had somehow survived thousands of years beneath the surface.
We have seashells and coral and snails, underwater snails and sand dollars, all in the rocks there. We have examples of it in the business.
The geophysicist analyzing the data confirmed that these weren't natural cave formations, but appeared to be man-made compartments that remained accessible. This discovery opened up possibilities that seemed almost too incredible. If hollow chambers really existed beneath the surface, what might they contain? Could wooden beams, artifacts, or even organic materials have been preserved in these protected spaces? But the controversy deepened when researchers discovered they weren't the only ones interested in the site's hidden treasures.
Yeah.
Because how do they build their ark? No one took at least 120 years to build it, or maximum was 120 years.
Is there anything to his gravesite that supposedly is in the area?
Yeah.
In 1985, investigators discovered that someone had conducted an unauthorized excavation at a nearby site that Wyatt had identified as potentially containing Noah's grave. Local police reported that an American had paid villagers to dig up what they found to be an 18-foot stone sarcophagus containing a giant skeleton and gold artifacts. The entire discovery was allegedly stolen, and despite an initial police investigation, the case mysteriously went cold. However, as we entered the year 2025, the investigation into the Durapanar formation reached a critical juncture. What started as a simple aerial photograph has evolved into one of the most technologically advanced archaeological investigations in history, involving 3 major universities and cutting-edge scientific equipment that's revealing secrets buried for millennia. The latest developments have been nothing short of extraordinary. Istanbul Technical University (ITU), Agri Ibrahim Chechen University (AICU), and Andrews University have formed an unprecedented international partnership to conduct the most comprehensive study of the site ever attempted.
The next month, the actual photographs were released by the Turkish military, and American and worldwide press actually picked up the story and published the black and white.
The 2024 soil analysis expanded to 88 different sampling locations, creating the most detailed chemical map of the formation ever produced. The results will blow your mind. Not only did the interior samples show dramatically higher organic content, but they also revealed pH levels that were 8 times lower inside the formation, along with elevated potassium levels, which is exactly what soil scientists would expect from the long-term decay of massive wooden structures. But the most exciting developments involve what researchers plan to do next. Core drilling operations are scheduled for late 2025, using advanced equipment that will allow scientists to extract samples from the hollow chambers detected by ground-penetrating radar without damaging the overall structure.
My grandfather told me this. I was Armenian, or they just signed down. I was a pilot in World War II, and I saw it from my window.
Yeah.
And you couldn't verify it, so it's a great...
The prospect of lowering cameras into these preserved chambers has captured the imagination of researchers worldwide. What might have been protected in these spaces for thousands of years? Could wooden beams, artifacts, or even organic materials have survived in the oxygen-depleted environment? Dr. Fethi Yüksel from Istanbul Technical University has outlined an ambitious research program that includes not just core drilling, but also advanced seismic surveys, microgravity analysis, and chemical preservation studies. The goal is to create a complete 3D map of everything buried beneath the formation. The international attention has also brought unexpected political support. The Turkish government has designated significant resources to the investigation, recognizing the potential tourism and cultural heritage value of what could be the most significant archaeological discovery in modern history. But not everyone is convinced. Organizations like Answers in Genesis have published detailed critiques, arguing that the formation is entirely natural and that the evidence is being misinterpreted by researchers eager to validate religious beliefs. Dr. Andrew Snelling, a prominent young Earth creationist geologist, has argued that the site's location in a valley contradicts the biblical description of the ark resting on the mountains of Ararat, implying a higher elevation. Even skeptical researchers acknowledge that the site displays unusual characteristics that warrant further investigation, even if they disagree with the interpretation of the findings.
What's next? I know you guys want to excavate, and you've talked a little bit about how you would do that creatively to not dig up the site, right? But what's next for 2025 and forward, as far as what you guys are planning on doing to further verify and investigate this site as the site of Noah's Ark?
Well, the biggest thing we would like to get to is core drilling. And now, when you mentioned the cores, what we got in 2024, the 88 sites, those were near surface soil samples.
Okay.
So, not like any couple meters down. It was just under, basically, with the weeds, the grass, the root system underneath that, were these samples taken. But even near surface, again, was getting the results showing, hey, inside soil is way different from outside soil. So what we want to do now, there's more analysis of the soil that the geologist, Dr. Bayer Tuton, would like to do, because one thing about the site that we can see from all these photographs, including the recently acquired declassified U.S. government spy satellite photos of the region, we're seeing the ship shape always there, but everything moving around it. So this thing...
Andrew Jones, who has dedicated his life to investigating the site, believes the timing of the discovery is significant. Modern technology has provided tools that previous generations of researchers could never have imagined, allowing non-destructive investigation techniques that can reveal hidden structures without damaging potential artifacts. But really, if the Durpanar Formation really is the remains of Noah's Ark, It would provide physical evidence for one of the most foundational stories in human history.
But the big thing we had also done, and I mentioned this to the newspaper reporters, was that in September of last year, Dr. Sally Bragg-Touton and Bill Crabtree, who's a soil scientist from Australia, who happened to be on one of my tours in September.
What do you think? Do you think we will be able to find more proof that Noah's Ark rested in the Durapanar site? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.